And now for my second open. This one's on Hillary's week. Now, Hillary Clinton said that the reason she had just one mobile device, a BlackBerry, and not two was because of convenience.
When I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two.
I get it, Hillary. Putting convenience first. I also have too many things in my purse, and it gets really heavy. And then your shoulder gets sore, and your back goes out of alignment. So it makes sense that you don't want to carry two devices. Forget that you could have put two email accounts on that same one device. We'll give you a pass on that one. But this week, we find out that Hillary Clinton not only had a BlackBerry, she had an iPad too. Now, an iPad is at least 3 times the size of a BlackBerry. There goes that convenience excuse. Oops. Now, Congressman Trey Gowdy, former prosecutor and a man who doesn't take kindly to lies and the disregard of subpoenas, now has Hillary between a rock and a hard place. Trey Gowdy is a former United States attorney. You got it, a federal prosecutor. Now, I know that you know, Hillary, how federal prosecutors work, given your extensive experience at the other end of their investigations. Hillary, a primer. You do not destroy evidence, you do not conceal evidence, and you do not lie. Your Washington two-step is not going to work with Trey Gowdy, the tiger you poked in the eye when his committee sought your emails on Libya. What am I talking about? Your State Department said you had no Benghazi emails. And lo and behold, here you are using your BlackBerry en route to Libya 11 months before the attack on our consulate. Now, you represent the United States of America, and you want us to believe that any emails at that important time would have been personal? Now, I don't want to rehash anything here, Hillary, but your reputation and your history regarding subpoenaed information is not good. Like those pesky, lost Rose Firm files that miraculously appeared or reappeared 2 years later. So it's no surprise, given your history and your familiarity with danger zones, that you would do everything in your power to circumvent detection of information a prosecutor or select committee might want to access, especially if that information puts you in a bad light. What's that? You're a former First Lady, a United States Senator, and a Secretary of State? How dare anyone suggest that everything you do isn't above board? Hillary, it's me and you talking here. Would those emails have shed light on your foundation raising millions of dollars from countries that you were doing business with as Secretary of State? Or would those emails have shed light on what actually went on in Benghazi? Or why you refused to designate Boko Haram a terrorist organization? You're a smart lady, Hillary. I get why you wanted a private server, but you may have just outsmarted yourself. And that's my second open. And now here to break down the rest of the sordid details is Jay Cost, author of the new book, A Republic No More. All right, Jay, what is the latest to come out this week?
Well, the latest is this extraordinary story about these emails that I should hasten to mention were not disclosed by Clinton herself. This was discovered by the Associated Press off of a Freedom of Information Act document dump by the State Department. The AP poured through the documents that State gave them and found a handful of emails that had that tagline at the bottom, "Sent from my iPad."
And so now we find out that she has the iPad. Now, Jay, I want you to take a look at the latest Fox News polls on Hillary's use of personal emails. 28% say she broke the law. 19% say she did something unethical. 32% say she used bad judgment. And 19% say she did nothing wrong. And a second poll shows 51% say all Hillary's emails should be turned over to the government. Your take?
Well, look, no politician running for president wants an 80-20 split on that question. Only 20% of Americans have registered voters saying that she did nothing wrong. That is an extraordinarily bad number for Clinton as she's about to launch her presidential campaign.
Well, but why is it that she's still the front runner? I mean, is her party secretly looking for a backup?
Well, they may wish they could find a backup, but, you know, the problem that they have is that Hillary Clinton has a very powerful organization, a very powerful network of donors and politicians and various interest groups who have her back. She and her husband have spent a quarter century doing favors for people and supporting people.
But Jay, excuse me, Jay, but they had her back when Barack Obama was a one-term senator, and everybody, you know, flew the coop on that one. Now, I mean, it's just one scandal after another.
Yeah, well, one of the advantages I think that Hillary has this time is that the rest of the Democratic bench is substantially weaker than it was 7 years ago. There's nobody like Barack Obama to take her on this time.
Well, do you think that, you know, quietly they may be looking for someone else?
I think ideally they might like somebody else, but look, I think at this point most Democratic operatives realize that even if they wanted to replace her with somebody, it would be very difficult and messy. So my intuition is that unless the other shoe drops, they're going to stick with her.
All right, Jay Koss, thanks so much for being with us this evening. And with me now, former Bill Clinton advisor Dick Morris. All right, good evening, Dick. You were with the Clintons in the White House for years, and you know how Hillary thinks. If you were advising her, what would you tell her to get her out of this mess? Can she even get out of the mess?
There's no way, Jeanine. This has gone way beyond a mess. This is a disaster, and I don't agree with your previous guest. I think that you're going to see O'Malley do very well in the caucuses and primaries against Hillary.
Tell us about O'Malley. Tell us about him.
He's the former governor of Maryland. Former governor of Maryland, a Democratic nominee, as liberal as Hillary on most stuff, that's taking her on in the primaries. And I believe that this latent discontent with Hillary, this concern that these scandals are going to doom the party in November, is going to mount higher and higher. And I would not discount the possibility that a candidate who's nowhere today catches fire and begins to move. We have to understand how this email scandal is a gigantic river with tributaries which will keep us going for months, if not for years.
Well, and you know,
when those
Dick,
30,000 emails come out.
Excuse me, Dick, and there's no question, this is a woman who understands the system. She's got more experience than anyone in government with federal prosecutors and investigations. She did it intentionally, I assume. She lied about the two devices.
Yeah, here's what happened, Jeanine. When Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State, he transcribed with the Secretary every conversation he had with the global leader. At the end of his tenure, he asked the State Department, do I have to give these back to you? And the State Department said, yes, you do. So Kissinger didn't want to, and he secreted them in a safe in Vice President Nelson Rockefeller's home. And the Supreme Court ruled that, yeah, you have to give them back, but only the State Department itself can make you do that. So he was safe. And Hillary's figured the same thing. She took office and she said, I'm not going to sue myself to get these back. I can keep them in a private safe guarded in my house.
All right,
but what she didn't reckon on was that she would be so close to danger in so many of these scandals, and the emails would be so decisive in those, that the demand for them would overwhelm her candidacy, and that's what's happening now.
All right, so you've got this woman who's in hot water in Benghazi, and yet her approval ratings were incredibly high, and now, we've got this latest scandal with people, when you talk about emails, everybody can relate to them. What is she doing? Is she waiting it out? Is she going to announce? What would you be telling her?
She's hoping that it goes away. She's delighted that Elizabeth Warren is not going to challenge her at this point, although if O'Malley does well in the polls, I wouldn't bet on Warren staying out. And she's hoping that this thing just goes away through time. But I think she's missing the point that as she accumulates negatives and as people trust her less and less, and the deadlines loom for other people to get into the race, you're going to have a vacuum here with an irresistible force pushing the Democratic Party to having an alternative to Hillary. Because if she goes down over this scandal, which I think she will, it'll cause enormous losses in 2016. Not just the presidency, but mammoth losses in Congress. And I think the Democrats have to be very worried about that taking place.
All right, Dick Morris, good to see you this evening. Thank you. All right, and coming up,